welcome to the deep dive discussion of The Haunting. Now, it's been a while since I've done a deep dive video. If you're a new subscriber, if you're new to the channel and you haven't watched any of these yet, this is more just a little bit more of a free form kind of just general conversation bit where I can completely talk freely about the movies that I'm encountering. So this might have some spoilers for the following movies. 1963's The Haunting, obviously. Legend of Hell House, House on Haunted Hill, both versions, and possibly Room 1408. So, just a heads up on that one. Now, I mentioned in my review, one of the things that I love the most about the 1963 version of The Haunting was the fact that there was no reason, the fact that there was no motive. I love the way that it's phrased. Some houses are born bad, or Hill House was born bad. I love the way that's phrased. It's just so simple, but so beautiful and accurate. I think that that really lends itself to a certain level of malevolence that is difficult to fight because it's difficult to identify. And again, fear of the unknown, if it keeps it unknown. It was one of the things I loved most about the movie Room 1408, when Samuel L. Jackson has John Cusack in his office towards the beginning of the movie, beginning-ish, and is going over why he doesn't want him to stay there, or at least in that room. He says, you misunderstand me. I'm not, saying that, so on and so forth. I'm not, I'm going to look up that quote. I'll be right back. And I'm back. I just looked it up. I have it here on the screen. So, you have this back and forth between John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, where John Cusack is being sarcastic, talking to his tape recorder. General manager claims that the phantom in the room interferes, and he gets cut off. No, I didn't say phantom. Didn't say anything about spirits or phantoms. Like, well, then what is it? It's an evil fucking room. I love that. I love the simplicity of that. It just spells it out right there that, what you're dealing with has no rhyme, has no reason, has no explanation, has no history, has no person behind the scenes, has nothing that you have any chance of really fighting. The best you can really do is possibly just getting out. House on Haunted Hill covered that in its own way, although that did have some history to it, and not getting into that necessarily. Legend of Hell House with Roddy McDowall, I already reviewed on this channel. It is one of my favorite haunted house movies. However, the fact that there was a backstory to it with Belasco is one of my least favorite parts of that. The showdown with Roddy McDowall at the end I thought was really good, but how many of us that have seen that movie can really say, and I'm not going to spoil what the ending is, but I will just say, how many of us that have seen the ending of that movie were really satisfied with the explanation of Belasco and the giant? I thought it was pretty weak for a movie that set itself up so well. And the thing I loved about it was the way Roddy McDowall talked about the house presupposed a level of not just malevolence but intelligence. Talking about how haunted what was the name of them? The Belasco house, Hell House, doesn't mind some visitors every once in a while. It doesn't mind people coming by for the weekend. It may give them a fright. It may send them on their way, but whatever. But you do not fight this house because it will fight back. And I love that. I love the intelligence behind that. And it raises an interesting point that I kind of want to talk about in the deep dive, is the level of malevolence or how screwed are you in terms of entering into the house. I think that's an interesting thing that films have to make that decision on, or stories in general about haunted houses have to make that decision on right away. How much time do you need to be there before you are basically just at that point doomed? And then you're in a position where if you don't fight the house, or if you don't fight the history of it, then it is going to kill you. Or drive you insane, or whatever. In Legend of Hell House, it would cripple you, or whatever. Some tackle that as pretty much as soon as your toe steps over the threshold of the house. Some films like Legend of Hell House, it's a bit more lenient than that, and that raises the question on that: is it lenience? Is it forgiving? Is it or is it simply a level of giant meets and be on your way, peon, unless you start biting me, and then okay, fine, now you've had it, or unless you stick around too long and or you're the fly that doesn't make just one swoop in front of the face but just constantly hangs there. Okay, well, now I'm going to swat you. And then you have situations like Gojira Haunted Asylum, where it really seemed like, the minute they stepped foot there, that was it. Room 1408 kind of seemed the same way. They were talking, Samuel L. Jackson was talking about folks that, just went in there for a brief moment, the door shut behind them, and then they came, or when they went in there, it looked like they'd been in there for a while. The rules of time and space were bent to the point of, as soon as you walk in, you're doomed, which is why he has regular turn-down service in there, but it is done in pairs with the door kept open by one person, and precautions are taken. I mentioned in my review, and I've mentioned in a few reviews here that have to do with haunted houses, that one thing that haunted house movies will tend to get wrong, not the good ones, but the ones that don't really measure up. One of the worst things that they can do is to try and make the haunted house not the main character, to try and have a character rise above it. The main character of any haunted house movie should absolutely be the house. It should be the first thing, and you can't forget about it. You need to show off the architecture. You need to have it live and breathe and be forefront in everything. You can't cheap out on the architecture and the interior design. It needs to really come alive for the audience and for the characters. Otherwise, it's just going to be a bit of a flop, and it's not going to be anything that they're really dealing with in any plot level. And it's certainly not going to deliver the scares as much as it could. But to get back to the 1963, The Haunting, which is kind of where this deep dive is coming from, I would at this point really like to hear from you in your comments and your opinions here. I think especially about my take on the Eleanor character that I mentioned in the review, how the inner monologue was just a bit too much, how she was meekly annoying, but I think that was the point of her character. I was watching it with friends the other day just to kind of get a refresher before reviewing it. And when the car tipped and they found her body in there, one of the people that I was watching it with that had never seen it before just exclaimed, "Thank God." So please leave comments below. I would love to hear from you about this movie, what your thoughts were about Eleanor. And for 100 reviews, we thank you here at the RotD channel. And by we, I mean me and my 3 fuzzbutts here that I finally want to introduce you to. These are my ferrets, Pongo, Churro, and Taquito. So we thank you. We look forward to many more reviews and many more deep dives and many more coffees and contemplations and all sorts of other videos that we'll be doing. Thank you very, very much for 100 reviews. We'll see you tomorrow.